Yamundow joins me here today, and you could learn more about what her team is up to by finding her on Instagram and look for Building Wealth from Rentals. And you'll find her there along with links to her websites and other material. I want to really point this out because she does host a mentorship every other month. So you'll find details on her Instagram on her next one. So really appreciate your time there, Yamu.
Thank you for having me.
So I warned you we're going to try to spend a little time on your background because your history is fantastic. So why don't you we'll just kind of do a truncated version.
Yes, I have. So I'll give you a summary.
Okay. So go for it.
Oh, okay. Thank you for joining, watching, or listening to this amazing podcast. My name is Yamundow Camara, but most Americans cannot say it. So my friends call me Yamu for short. I'm from West Africa, a small country called the Gambia. I grew up as an orphan. My mom passed when I was 2. My father passed when I was 11. I'm from a family of 7. And in my culture, female child education is not the exit strategy for you. It's mostly, if you made it to grade 6, that's good enough, okay? That's good enough for any female child. And most of the decisions are made by the male, family members. So we live in extended family. So if you have 5 brothers or 6 brothers, and most of the parents have 2, 3 wives. So it's a lot of cousins, a lot of brothers, a lot of siblings. And we live in compounds. So if you have like 6 brothers, all of them will live in the same household, basically. They will just build next house to the next house. And it's a whole family with the same cousins and first cousin and second cousin. So all the same last names. So that shows the power of a family member. So if the father has maybe 20 sons or 17 daughters. That's like a power showing kids it's a power. So for me, when my mom passed away, my dad was really sick. So my sister was supposed to get married. And for a female child, you already know who you're getting married to by the age 3 or 2 or whatever. Maybe when you were born, they know that, oh, you're going to marry this cousin. So you already know, oh, this person's going to be my husband. So my sister had to go get married. But my father was really sick. So she took me and my brother, who's like 4 years older than me, with her to her husband's village. So us living in their extended family, we went through a lot of abuse because we're the kids that are not from that household, basically. So for those of you who know, kids that go under abuse, whether it's sexual or physical, they're usually bedwetters. So I used to wet the bed a lot, and they wouldn't let me sleep on the bed. So I sleep on the dirt floor because even though my family, my father was poor, they were better situation financially than my father. So I wasn't allowed to sleep on the beds, and my father was sick back in our village. We would go visit me and my brother when he's admitted to the hospital or he's really sick. We'll go visit. Sometimes holidays we'll go there. And sometimes when we go, there's no food to eat. However, even though that place was bad where I lived, was worse because there was abuse, physical abuse. My brother would rebel because he lost his parents. He lost his mom when he was like 4. So he knew his mom, but then that was taken away from him. So he's always trying to find that love. So he rebels a lot. For me, I'm good at school. So my focus was only to be obedient, do what everyone says, even though I still get the beatings for peeing in bed. Most of the time I have to wait to be beaten before I go to school. So I remember one time we had a guest and the guest was like, "Why are you here? All the kids are going to school." I was like, "Oh, they haven't beaten me yet." And the guest was like, "What?" And when I came, the guest was gone. Most of the time now that makes sense to me, like what was going through that guest's mind. But to me, it was normal because that's how I grew up. Like, oh, it's normal to beat me because I pee in bed, or it's normal to, So growing up in that environment, when I go to school, I'm that girl that always takes first in the class, then first in the region. And where I come from, because it's a village, most of the opportunities are in the city. So people that get connection to the government are the ones that get scholarships and stuff like that. For me, my scholarship was coming from the school because the principal and the school would write on my behalf to the city, like, hey, this girl, she's from the village, but she's doing great. Look at her grades. So I started showing up in newspaper, not showing up, but it started publishing me in newspapers and stuff like, oh, this girl did great in a region and she's from this very bad school in a village. So I kept going, getting scholarship and going. So they were like, oh, it's about to be time for her to get married. Because at grade 9, most of my peers are already on baby number 2, number 3. So my auntie and my sister used to vouch for me and say, well, we're not paying any money for her. And her betrothed husband can go marry a second wife. Like he already has one and just let her finish. Like we're not paying for school for her. So my auntie used to vouch for me and go back and forward with the elders, and they were like, "Okay, we'll give her of this." But then I knew I wanted to go to college, and I was like, "I'm gonna do so well so I could get scholarship to go to college." And I did, and it was time for me to get married this time because there's a lot of excuses of why I'm not married by this time. And this is about 16, 17 years, mind you. The culture shock, imagine that, America and my culture. But yeah, that's how it all started with me. And a lot of people ask me, why real estate? Like, how does it start? As a child who was like 8, 9, 10 years old, sleeping on the floor, I had encountered bugs. I mean, sometimes I go to school and my friends will help me kill bed bugs on my uniform. That's how bad it is. And sometimes I don't have shoes. The teachers will help me buy uniforms, or some parents will give me used shoes or used uniforms from other kids. But for me, I never looked at it as I was poor. I just knew that, oh, we're all poor. But my situation was different because I felt that was normal. That's all I knew. But yeah, so always when I was a kid, laying down on the bed, and most of the time I go to the shopkeeper and I ask the shopkeeper to give me boxes, like cartons. You know, when you're moving, those boxes you get, you put your stuff to move. I just take them and cut them into rectangular shapes and I just lay it on them. One time they took me to the hospital. The doctor was like, if you have wasted like 1 minute, she would not have made it because that's how bad it is. And nobody knew I was sick. We had a guest and their bed's there. The guest is sleeping on the bed and heard somebody's teeth going and, like, put the touchlight on my face. Mind you, we don't have power or anything. So put touchlight on. So I said, "Whose kid is this? Like, this kid is dying. Look at her sweating." So they rushed me to the hospital. The doctor was like, "If you hadn't waited till morning, she wouldn't have made it." That's how bad and negligent it was. So me sleeping on the floor those times, I always say, as anybody who never had something, your goal is always to have that. Now I can't say I want a mom. I'm gonna magically create a mom, but I always knew that, okay, one day I wanna buy a house. So I always say when I grow up, I have finished school and I get a job, if they let me, I'm gonna buy a house and I'm gonna have a toilet and I'm gonna have this and I'm gonna have that. That was my obsessor. Even my friends at school, when I visit their homes, I'm like, "You have a toilet? You have a bed? You have this?" Those are my things, but I never knew it was gonna be multiple houses or an investment. I don't even know what that meant. I just knew that one day I want a home of my own. But that's where real estate, I guess, started for me. Fast forward, when I graduated from before I went to college, they wouldn't let me go. So my auntie has to step in again and say, "Well, what if she just finished college and start college and mid college, she can get married. By the time she has a baby, she'll be done because it's full. She already has a scholarship and the government is paying for it. Let's just let her go." So he went and married a second wife while I continued, right? So and me having a higher education increases my bride price as well. So that's like a trophy wife, basically a girl that's educated. So if I married into his family, it's like a trophy basically. So it's good on both ways to them.
Mm.
Crazy, but that's my background, and I made it to college. In my final semester, I started a nonprofit organization that teaches girls how to code because we had a university. So my country is colonized by the British, and we usually have exchange university professors come to our small university to give services. So they would stay for like a summer. We do an intense summer course and all of that. So I come across computer science, and that's why I stumbled upon it because I was really good in maths. So I have a major in computer science and a minor in mathematics. But my final semester, there are not many females in most of my courses, only the boys. I was like, you know what, I should start a nonprofit to teach people basic IT. So I started this nonprofit organization called Girls in IT. So we go to different schools in different regions and we just teach them basic IT. During my final semester, I got an internship job on an IT company there, software company. They hired me to be an intern, but after I graduated, they hired me full time. So I was using their used computers to do this service with some of my friends from college. So we started that nonprofit organization. I kind of blew up, and people keep telling me, "You should apply for this link. There's the U.S. government has this program fellowship that for young African leaders. President Obama started it with Nelson Mandela, I think around 2014, 2015, and they were like, it's for young African leaders that are doing amazing things. I think you should qualify for this." I'm like, nobody's gonna pick me. Like, this is for people that are fighting violence and wars and stuff like that, not IT stuff. But I was like, you know what? Let me just apply. Like, it's free, right? So I applied for it, and I got an email from the US Embassy that I got to go to the first interview. I went to the interview, I was part of the finalists. And then from that interview, another interview, I kept getting emails, and I'm like, I guess this is going somewhere. So at the sixth interview, I got an email that I finally got it. that I'm the one selected from 40,000 applicants to come to the US and study at Northwestern, and also later flown to meet President Obama in 2016 in DC in August. That was right before the election. So that's how I got to the US.
Wow. Hey, when you that was the truncated version of that, but man, you were able to cram quite a bit. One of the things that I was going to ask is that at a very young age, you seem to be very single-minded regarding what you wanted and how you're going to go about it.
Mhm.
That had to have been pretty difficult in the environment that you were in. I mean, a lot of people don't break out of that mental situation. Is that something that you found comes naturally? Could you talk a little bit about staying on course and how you kept that mindset going?
Yeah, I think, and I'm gonna give 100% credit to God because I feel like everything I do, God has a hand in it. And I used to pray a lot because like loneliness, I'm those kids that are always in their own head. I used to like imagine things and my imagination goes wild. And I read a lot and I like writing things. So everything that I see, I write because I'm always in my own scale. Everybody has access to me. They will do whatever they want, like sexual abuse, physical abuse, all of that. So I said I wasn't gonna cry, but now I'm getting teary again. But yeah, so I always am outside, like, I know how to, like, take myself from that environment and just imagine. I'm always imagining things. I don't know how to put that in words, but I always see something better. I was like, "This is not it." Like, I know God is not gonna leave me like this. And I know my brother went through whatever I went through, he went harder because he wasn't good at school. I was good in school, so I always take that. Okay, I might be the kid abuse at home, but when I get to school, I'm that favorite kid because the school is like proud of me. The teachers are proud of me. They're showing me off. I'm on the newspaper. At the village, nobody cares about that, but at the school, they do. So when I go to school, it's my escape route. My goal is to always make everybody proud that is helping me at school. Some teachers buy me uniforms. So some teachers give me food. Sometimes I don't go to school because I don't have shoes. So a teacher would send another student to bring me shoes. Those are the kind of things, and I'm like, "I can't let these people down. I have to be something. I gotta get out of here." Like, if you're anything was better than what situation I was in. So, yes, God, and also working hard and also believing in myself. I knew that that wasn't it for me. So, when I went to college, after college, I was like, "I can't go to college and go back to the lifestyle of being married, with 4 other wives, 3 other wives. This is not me. I had to find a way out." So when the fellowship came, they actually didn't want me to come, and they said, "It's already paid for. She's already on the news," because the US Embassy published it on Facebook and everybody made copies and the newspapers put it on. So they were like, "It'd be very weird if they don't let me go because it's not coming out of nobody's pocket. It's paid for free and everything." But I always knew I wanted more. Always, always, always knew that I wanted more. With the toilets, I always imagined me getting a house, getting a toilet, getting something better. I always wanted something more for myself. I just knew that that wasn't it. Because when I go to school, I'm like, these kids are not smarter than me, right? If I work hard, I can get everything that I don't have now for myself. And I guess that's what I went. I can't say I was born in it, that maybe I was, but yeah, I credit it to God.
Well, that's really something. And before we jump into it, because I'm going to have Yamu share us now some of the information around her first rental property and how she found her way into this.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. But before we get into that, I want to point everybody one more time to Instagram, Building Wealth from Rentals. You're going to learn more about Yamu and follow along. There's a lot of great information and content there as well as on the website. And if you found some value in what we're talking about so far, do us a quick favor and share this with one of your investor friends. And if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a quick like and subscribe. So, Yamu, you get out of college. What's your first job here? And how did you find your way to your first rental property?
Of course, I would love to tell you. It's another short story, but after I completed the Northwestern program, I got another full scholarship. This is a girl who's trying not to go home. I got another full scholarship to study at University of Illinois. So University of Illinois has different sister campuses. So it's Springfield, Illinois campus, UIS, and my scholarship there was They waive all of my tuition fees, my master's program tuition fees, and I work for the university as a data analyst. So I analyze student data for them. So it's like a work kind of situation where I work. So I'm able to file taxes with that, even though my stipend was $1,000. So for me, it was more like, hey, you got this opportunity. What are you gonna do with it? Right. So I'm like, this is amazing. You waive all my tuition fees and I get to pay $1,000. Now with the $1,000, student insurance is included. International student insurance is very expensive, right? And I have to pay transportation and also rent. So with the rent, I'm only left with about after student insurance about 300 or four something. I'm left with a little amount with transportation and feeding and boarding. So it's like I need to find a roommate. So in the university, they usually have Facebook groups and students will ask other students to, split the rent and have roommates and it's cheaper. So what I realized was there some of the students, their parents will buy a three-bedroom home, right? In their name as a mortgage, and their kids will stay in one room and they will rent out the other rooms. And some of them, what they do is in those rooms, they will have four people stay there, meaning four students per room. All they need to do is bring their mattresses. They'll bring out twin mattresses. So I was looking for that so that way my rent, because at the end of the day, I'm only left with $50 for the month for feeding. So I'll eat like I go to auditoriums, events that are happening, or a conference, and I'll just see somebody who's organized it. They're parking things, and I say, "Hey, are you gonna throw this?" I help them organize, and I say, "What are you gonna do with these drinks?" Say, "Oh, I was gonna throw them." "Oh, do you want them?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want them." So that's what I used to eat on noodles, of course, sometimes just plain rice. So I had to find a way. So when I found those student Facebook, I was like, "This is better for me." So I will pay less on rent. That was mind blowing to me because not only are they paying their mortgages after they buy the home, right? The rents of the other two units are paying for everything and they're cash flowing. It basically they're cash flowing and they have this property that's gonna be paid off if they want it in just few years. So for me, it was like mind blowing. I was like, I have to do this. So while I was in college, I already knew I have to do this eventually when I get a job. So once I graduated from college, I started looking for jobs everywhere. Of course, if you're an international student, especially in the science field, the government gives you just 1 year to find a job where the company will sponsor your visa. If you don't have a company that will sponsor your visa, like a work permit, then you have to go back. And you guys already know I don't want to go back to my situation. So that's how I was like, okay, let me find a job. I keep looking for a job. And I stumbled upon a recruiter that's recruiting for a job that says classified. Well, I don't know what that meant. I just was applying for anything. So I did the interview, but the rules were like a little different. I was like, this kind of strict though. But I didn't understand it. I was like, you know what? I'll just do it because at this point I'm desperate. So I did the interview. During the interview, the apartment complex I was living at, and this is Georgia now. I moved to Georgia, and the apartment that I was renting at, they were doing the loan, and in the instruction it says no noise, no this, no that. It was a lot of a lot of rules. And the interview at the beginning was so bad, but at the end I was like, I'm so sorry. That was supposed to happen. That was supposed to be the quietest place in the house, and I'm so sorry. They were like, go ahead. I was like, "Oh boy, this is not gonna work out." But I did the interview anyways. I ended up answering all the questions. I felt that I was okay with the answers. And 30 minutes, about 1 hour later, the recruiter called me and was like, "Did you even know who you interviewed for?" And I was like, "I don't know." They were like, "That was the CDC and they love you so much, they wanna take you. Send me your green card, blah, blah, blah." I was like, "Green card? I don't have a green card. I'm a F1 student." It was like, "What? Hang up." I was like, "Oh, there goes that job." So he called me back and said, "Well, they loved you so much, they wanna move ahead with you." So that's how I got the job as a data scientist for CDC. So, mind you, before I moved to Georgia, I already knew that I wanted to do what those parents were doing, buy a property, rent out different rooms. So that was where it started. They give you like a little amount salary to test you, see if they're gonna hire you. So after that 6 months grace period, they decide if we're gonna take you full time or not. So even though I wasn't getting a lot of money as a data scientist would get, I was okay with that. That's a huge lot of money for me. So within the 3 months, 4 months period, I was able to save 8,000. So while I was saving, I already had this started reading research on real estate. So all I do was real estate, real estate, real estate, research, podcast, everything real estate, everything that's free. So basically, things that I can afford, cheap books, I'm reading them. I'm so into it right now. And I took out one thing. Like everybody in the podcast, everybody in the books, they're saying if you want to start with local banks in the city. Don't go to the bigger companies, go to the local banks. So I was like, okay, I can't afford properties in Georgia where I live. How about I start where I know, which is Illinois? So I started looking for smaller towns in Illinois, and I'll just list all local banks and I'll call them. Some of them hang up on me. Some of them don't know even know what I'm saying because my accent was thicker then. So, but I got one bank to listen to me and they were like, well, first of all, go get a credit card because you don't have any credit. Your credit score is like it's like you were a newborn. I told them, I was just here a few years. They were like, yeah, so it looks like you're just a newborn. Go get credit card. You work for CDC now. Yes. Go get a secure line of credit, start building, pay utilities from there. Come back in a year or two. And I was like, okay. So I went and did everything that she said. I was so into analyzing deals already, so good at it. So I was like, you know what? It's not gonna hurt if she says no, but I'm gonna try this. So I found this deal that was really good. Was listed for like 65 or something. It's a triplex. The owners were going through a divorce. They just wanted to sell and settle. I got them to negotiate it to 52,000. So I presented everything to the bank and I said, these are the numbers. His 3 units, 1 unit is bringing in seven something. This unit is bringing seven this and that. And here it is. Worst case scenario, my mortgage will be this. Worst case scenario, if only one tenant pays, that's gonna cover the mortgage and everything. And I submitted to the lady, and she was like, "Well, I'm not promising anything, but I'll send it to underwriters to look at it." And then she got back to me and said they said they would do the deal. So that's how it started with that deal, and that's how I started investing.
Wow. That's quite the journey. So you got the first rental under your belt. How soon did the second one come?
The second one came like a month later because then I had some issues with that property. But then I was like, okay, every cash flow that I was getting from that property, I want to repeat this again. I went through, the property manager stealing from me. Of course, there was COVID when I closed. It was around COVID. This is 2020. So I had to pivot and make the property work because most of the things that the agent and the property manager said about the property was all wrong. It was just a number space. So I was able to turn that property around and get it to cash flow to 2,000 a month income was what I was bringing in, and tenants pay all the utilities. I paid the sewer bill. So I was taking that cash flow from every and also whatever I was getting from my W-2 to put a down payment on another property. I think it was like less than 19,000 that I had to put on my second property that was in Cleveland, Ohio. It was 68,000. So I think it was like 12,000 plus closing costs and everything was up less than 20,000 that I had to put down on a 68,000 duplex in Cleveland. Each unit was rented for one was 750 and one was six something. So I was bringing about like 1,300 or 1,200 a month on that one. Also, tenants were paying all the utilities. So I was able to cash flow with Section 8.
You primarily focusing on kind of more of a short-term rental, but with professionals, right?
Yes,
Like, is that and you are already up to 150 some units?
54.
154. So when that f whe I can't help but notice that even at a younger age, as you've been progressing here, it started off the slow progress trying to escape that situation. It's like a snowball. It's like within 4 years' time, you're up to 150 some units already.
Thanks to God.
So, based on all of that,
Mhm.
when you were younger and you were trying to leave South Africa,
West
did
Africa.
so West Africa, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
West Africa. Did as a kid, did you even have any like you mentioned how rich your imagination was.
Mhm.
Did you ever imagine to the level that you've achieved so far?
Nope. First of all, I didn't imagine I was gonna meet President Obama. Let's start there. And no, I never imagined it. All I wanted was just a house. I just wanted a toilet and I wanted a bed. That was my goal as a kid. Just think about it. If you're a kid, what you always saw other people have, other kids have, you don't have, that was your goal when you have it. But I never thought it was gonna be multiple toilets and multiple houses. I just knew I wanted anything was better than my situation.
And then your strategy now, you've niched down to this sector of the real estate world.
Mhm.
What made you decide to go into this direction and to pick this area?
Of course, I would love to dive into that. So the first year, I was just focused on Section 8 properties. I'll buy 30,000 properties, put 20,000 in it, worth 80,000, worth 90,000. Section 8, bringing in 1,500. So that was my goal. Repeat the process. So the first year, that's all I did. Fast forward to 2021, I live in Georgia. At this time, everybody's talking about Airbnb. Everybody's talking about, oh, you can get a property you can rent a property from a landlord and sublease it. and you rent it on Airbnb. And I was like, that's an awesome deal, but how about you own it? Because I'm more focused on ownership. And I said, well, I own a couple of properties in the Midwest. I live in Georgia. I can't do that here. But how about I do the same mechanism? Because they rented to travel nurses. Because of after COVID, a little bit after the shutdown, there were a lot of influx of nurses and business professionals, especially in the medical field. So I was like, well, if people are making money in Atlanta here with different nurses in different hospitals, maybe I should do the same instead of doing it here. I could do it where it's going to be cheaper, where I already know the market, where I already have a team, meaning my contractors, my property managers. How about I do that? So that's the same mechanism I took, and I started buying properties close to the hospitals, and I just furnished and turned it around. I saw that the competition were mostly mom and pops, like, oh, a retired couple whose kids went to college and they rent out their basement or they rent out a bedroom in their house. So I was like, what if I do a whole complete unit to a nurse? So I started buying single family homes. And then I went to apartment complex. So I was buying like 12-unit apartment complex, 8 unit apartment, like one bedroom, two-bedroom units. And I furnished and I renovated and I furnished everything. I rented to the nurses. So they were paying me. So for example, a two-bedroom in my market would be like 700 to 800 market rents, traditional rent. But when I furnish it, I could get up to 3,000. And if the demand is high at that month, I can go up to 3,005, 4,000 in some cases. So that's how I was making the money. So one apartment, like a 8-unit apartment will bring me about 22,000. A 5-unit apartment will bring me like maybe 8,000. So I was using all that money to just buy more. So I just keep buying, buying, buying. And I just kept scaling. So if I buy in this town, like maybe 2, the next town I'll buy the same because I'm seeing demands based on what the inquiries I'm getting. And insurance companies too will reach out to me and say, we have a family that we need to host for 6 months. Do you have a place? And I'll say, well, all my place I've built up, but I'm renovating 2 more property and they'll be shut down in a couple of weeks. So they were like, okay, we'll be in touch. So I started connecting with travel agencies and also insurance companies. So I started hosting them. And then it scaled to windmill companies in the Midwest calling me that they have some guys that are supposed to stay for 6 months, or solar company guys. There's have guys that are doing a project for 1 year and they need a place. They don't want to stay in a hotel. So I started buying more based on their need, based on the demand, and just kept scaling. And everything that I get, yeah, I have a 2012 Mitsubishi car. So I just take all the money and pump it back to real estate, and I feel like that's how I scale. So my cash flow started going from and all my cash flow, you can see my income are all income that comes faster. Like Section 8, the government pays me on the first of the month. So I don't have to worry about if the rent is paid or not. Some tenants pay me $6, some $36 because the government pays most of their rent, right? And then you come to the midtown rentals where the companies pay me 50,000 in advance to host their guys for 7 months. Once the money come, I turn it over, buy more properties, and I kept going. And my expenses stays the same. So some of the properties I got, so I have a lake house that I purchased because there was the demand on some of the properties that are close by. I got this lake house for 135, 44,000 renovation. It's been rented to a windmill company for 10,000. It's actually 5,500 every 2 weeks. So they have their guys coming. So they signed a contract. They have their guys, maybe 4 of their guys stay at 3-bedroom home for like 4 weeks. And another 4 weeks, they will replace those guys with other 4 guys. So they kept going. So I don't care as long as you got the capacities there. I don't mind if the contract is 3 months and you have 15 people stay there in the period of 3 months. I don't care as long as the payment is done on time. So that's how I scaled. And I recently started going into commercial, bigger apartment complexes. And I just purchased a self storage facility, 95 units, because I always wanted to get into self storage as well. But yeah, that's how I scaled.
Yeah. Yeah, self-storage is kind of a hot thing. It seems, at least around my area, it's either self-storage or car washes.
Power
So
shop.
so this has just been such a fantastic conversation, and it's really telling, and you can see how you're scaling so quickly. You're pulling in cash flow that is much higher than you're going to normally get. In fact, in some areas, like you mentioned Illinois a few times, some of those numbers may not typically work otherwise, but you're making some of these numbers work with your model.
Yeah.
Just remind everybody again, head over to Instagram. I'm going to make this a clickable link in the show notes, but it's building wealth from rentals. It's building wealth from rentals. You can learn a little bit more about what Yamu is doing there. This is a fantastic conversation. Is there, but before we jump into the rapid fire questions, is there a question or concept you wish we would have covered here so far today?
Yes, so I want people to know you can always start what you can afford. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. Don't say, "Oh, I'm gonna wait 2 more years and I'm gonna start investing here." So if let's say you live in Georgia or any market and you can't afford it or it's kind of expensive, you cannot say, "Oh, I'm gonna save up and then I'll invest next year." By the time you save up 50,000 extra to start investing the following year, the house prices have gone 100,000 more. So you can never afford it. So I always say, start where you can. I'm not saying go to the worst city and buy in the worst area, but you can always find properties in your price range in other cities. Like the opportunity that are here in America is different. Like in Africa, you can't just jump and go buy over there. It's a whole different country and whole different America. Like I can buy a house in Cleveland. I've never been to Cleveland. Like not that I don't want to, but it doesn't make sense because I have a team that does everything for me. You see what I mean? So I live in Georgia and most of my properties are out of state. And now that I can afford in Georgia, I start buying in Georgia. I have properties in Savannah, Georgia, and it's 5 hours away from me in Alpharetta. But that doesn't stop me. Like if I see a deal in Savannah that's gonna bring me so much money and it's close to a hospital, that's what I'm gonna buy. If I'm gonna do a road trip with my family to go check up with the contractors, that's what I do. So a lot of people look at me now and say, "Wow, you achieved so much so quickly." The opportunity is there for everybody, especially Americans. Like, there's so many things that you could do. Like, I did all of this without my papers, my green card. I just recently got my green card. It's just a matter of finding it. And a lot of people will tell me, even my mentees will get properties for 60,000. One of my mentees just bought a property for 70 in South Carolina. And she renovated really good and it appraised for 235. And when I posted it, a lot of people were like, no way, there's no 70,000 home. Just because you can't find it doesn't mean they're not out there. So don't wait to buy real estate and wait. Mindset is very important.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to pry into this, but you just mentioned family. What does your family look like here now in the United States?
So I married my college sweetheart,
Oh, nice.
and we have 2 kids. I have a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old, 15 months old girl, and a 6-year-old boy.
Oh,
Yes.
awesome. It was great to have this conversation. It's great to hear your journey.
Thank you.
Well, if you're ready, we'll just jump into the rapid fire questions and close out this episode.
Sure. Let's go.
Well, first of all, what lie do some real estate investors sometimes tell themselves?
Like, they're multimillionaires, but they're really not. So, for example, a lot of people say, "Well, I have $1,000. I'm a multimillionaire." It depends on how much you're bringing in. Like, for me, it's more of cash flow. If you tell me you have $2,000, what's your cash flow look like? What's your net look like? How much are you bringing home after you pay off all that loan? So, a lot of it's very quick for somebody to say, "Oh, I own 2 properties. They're worth this million." But if you fail on your mortgage, that house gonna go to the bank because the bank owns 85% or 90%. So
Right.
that's one lie. It was like, "Oh, I'm a millionaire." Like 2 properties hardly gonna make you a multimillionaire. It's all about financial independence. Like if this goes away, are you still able to manage? Are you still able to like swim or sink? I mean, it's nice to see somebody investing and they say, "I have $1,000, but how much are you really bringing in?"
That is a common thing. I hear the number of doors a lot, and
Yeah.
that doesn't really tell you a lot.
Yeah.
Do you have a book recommendation or what are you reading right now?
So I'm reading Traction. This book, I've been wanting to read it for a long time, but I've been super busy. I've read all the other books. So Traction is what I'm reading now, and I'm really loving it. It's a
If you could
business.
go Sure. If you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that be?
It would be a different thing. So which one would I say? I would say it would eventually happen with the hard work pays off. At the beginning, you feel like you're doing all of this and it doesn't, and you want to give up. And that's not just for somebody who's poor or is suffering. It could be even a multimillionaire, but you're putting in so much work, but you're not seeing results. You just have to go through it to see the results.
What single strategy, process, or tool have you implemented that has had the biggest time saving impact to you or your business?
So my first experience with property managers and contractors was really bad. And I find it hard to trust property managers. But eventually I have to when I started scaling and I was sending the wrong checking information to the guests and they're checking into the wrong place and they're finding each other. I was like, yeah, I have to scale and actually automate and delegate. So I started delegating and things became easier for me. At the beginning, I was managing multiple properties by myself. And as I scale, it was getting too much. So delegation, I wish I did it earlier. It would have freed me and made me scale faster.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, yeah, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you bringing so much value to the show. It's been great meeting you.
Thank you.
One last time, you can find more information on Instagram. Look for Building Wealth from Rentals. That's going to be a clickable link in the show notes. But I hope you'll consider coming back again sometime. I have a feeling we could spend a whole episode just speaking on scaling alone.
Thank you. I wish it was longer. I would have dived into the problems I actually faced with the contractors, with the property managers stealing, managing properties out of state. Because a lot of people say, well, how do you manage them out of state? I mean, I want to do it, but I can't buy in other state. How do you, make sure your money comes in time? So that's why I get these strategies that are the money comes directly to me, Section 8 pays directly to me, the nurses pay directly to me, to my bank account. So I like those payment where I get my money first and then the service later. Instead, have somebody in and then they don't pay your rent. Especially that when they know you're out of state, they're like, oh, if I say I can't pay the rent the first of the month, I can do the 15. She's not gonna come all the way just to get 1,500, right? So
Mhm.
they started testing the waters and then it gets worse. So with Section 8, the tenant is my relationship with the tenant is just maintenance and my handyman takes care of that. And the money just comes to my a separate source. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. It was a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, this was great. I appreciate it. One last time, Instagram.com, Building Wealth from Rentals. Thanks again, Yamu.
Thank you so much for having me.